What's going on, everybody? It's Koop and I, Jeff Wall here. We're going to talk some UFC 252 action, some interesting stuff in that event, to say the least. It looked on paper a pretty terrible card, but lo and behold, pretty decent. Some interesting stuff happened, to say the least. We'll start from the top down. Stipe Miocic, Daniel Cormier 3. Obviously, if you saw our previous video this week, I didn't think that the fight would be that competitive. It turns out, for the most part, this is a pretty decently matched fight. I wouldn't say it's particularly close. I thought Stipe pretty easily pulled away with the win there. But Koop, let's talk about your thoughts.
I would say that Stipe definitely was doing way better, but I think that he was at the advantage of that eye poke, because DC literally could not see. He couldn't even see after the fight, And what did that happen? It happened in the third round.
It was like the third or fourth, yeah.
Yeah, it was the third round, I believe. And I feel like DC was disappointing to me that when I was watching that whole fight, because I'm like,
really?
You wrestled only in the first round. You could have wrestled him, I don't know why he kept staying up. And especially if your eyes messed up, I don't know why he wasn't trying to get close,
Well, I think, okay, here's my thing. I think DC did really well, considering that, there's two parts to it, obviously, right? For one, Stipe clearly has not fixed the thing that got him knocked out in the very first fight, which is clinch breaks. Every single clinch break is where he landed his best strikes.
He fixed his chin, because I don't know how he took that many shots, bro.
Well, that was
surprising to me.
Stipe's chin is just weird. He's been knocked out by Stefan Struve and DC. DC is admittedly a pretty hard hitter, especially at heavyweight, and he lands those sneaky shots, right? But he also could take a Francis Ngannou punch to the face too. So Stipe's chin is ridiculous. It's one minute it's here, the next it's here. Either way, his chin is it's just stupid. It's stupid. But either way, I think DC did a pretty good job, all things considered. I was surprised at the adjustments he did make, but I mean, obviously in fight, DC doesn't make any adjustments, and you saw that pretty clearly, which is why I scored it pretty easily for Stipe, pretty much 4-1 there. I mean, the eye poke, man, I mean, honestly, let's just be real here. Number one, DC poked him in the eye in this one. He poked him in the eye in the second one, and he poked him in the eye in the first one. He has the advantage there. And not only that, so DC, and obviously I hope DC recovers from this fully, because he did have a torn cornea reportedly. But Stipe did have to have surgery on his eyes in one of those fights due to DC's eye pokes.
And it seems like now he can't go to the wrestling because they'll tire him out too fast.
I would say, actually, in this fight, to be honest with you, as with the other two, he couldn't wrestle. He can wrestle Stipe. Stipe has had his number in terms of wrestling, and at least in terms of defense, in terms of nullifying things, because he wasn't really actively wrestling DC. Stipe has had his number in the first fight too. Do you remember when DC picked him up? Yeah. DC couldn't do anything. I mean, I know you're saying let's wrestle and stuff like that. Like, everybody's saying this, but DC could not do anything.
I feel like he didn't try enough though.
But he did, though. He did, and then Stipe just nullified it like that, and it was over. Because the main thing DC always does in terms of wrestling is body locks. And as soon as Stipe kind of said, "No, we're not gonna play that game with you," it was over. DC couldn't do anything. And the thing is, too, is DC's injuries have really caught up to him as well. You can see there's the back surgery, the leg injuries that I think, as far as we know, he's never fixed fully. He doesn't have any bend in his body. You can see every time he fights, he's standing straight up, because he literally cannot bend his body anymore. In that respect, it's amazing DC is still going. But
especially because, wrestlers, they wear their body out like no tomorrow.
Absolutely.
I think it's one of the most grueling sports, and he was an Olympic wrestler. And then after, he goes to MMA at such a late age,
Absolutely. But the reality is just that he can't do it anymore. I think he could still out wrestle most heavyweights for sure. But man, against the top level with that many injuries, it's not looking good. It's not looking good. And you have to give Stipe credit for completely nullifying it, for making DC feel like basically the only place he could really succeed was in moments in the clinch, which is where he was succeeding. That was where he was, pretty much for the most part, at least in terms of striking, open exchanges in the middle of the center of the cage. That's where he was winning, and he was doing pretty good there. But overall, I think Stipe, look good, made the adjustments he needed to, and so did DC as well. Cormier was vulnerable to the body shots. Stipe in the first 2 rounds, great. After that, completely threw it out the window. And this is something a lot of fighters do, including Jose Aldo, where he'll kick and then some kind of adjustment is made or something, and he just stops. Doesn't continue to do it, just completely stops.
Stipe looked like he was being very methodical in his strikes. Like if you see, he was doing that, he'd do a body shot and then he'd go straight to the top right after.
Yeah, but then
he was just hooking to the body.
But then he stopped. But then he stopped, and it's like, dude, like keep going. Just adjust, do something a little different.
But the thing was, he was doing enough, you know.
And no, he wasn't.
I feel like he wasn't
though. Enough. I don't think so.
Like I don't know. Definitely, once he poked his eye and stuff, he could have at least like hit him more on that side. I felt like it was pretty obvious his eye was messed up, man. Like you look at him, he literally looked like he was like Fetty Wap or something, bro. He looked like his eye was gone. Man.
no comment, but I just think body shot wise he definitely could have done more. I think he could have kicked him more. I mean, there is one thing though that Stipe is not a big kicker. Cormier, I was surprised with the kicks as well, but I mean, you know, I will say this much in terms of professionalism compared to what Dominic Cruz did. Oh my goodness, like night and day at least. I mean, he didn't really, you know, give Stipe his kudos, but at least he handled the interview with a lot more professionalism than he did. I was tweeting that I thought like here comes another UFC commentator slandering a referee for not seeing something. I don't know why Mark Goddard needs to apologize for not seeing an eye poke. I mean, it happened so quick.
I really saw that even after the fight he couldn't see, so like nothing would have been changed, you know.
Right, and it is something that happens in a fight. Again, Cormier poked Stipe in the eye several times, didn't get acknowledged, had to have surgery. Let's be fair here. Let's be fair, especially ESPN MMA, the Instagram and Twitter page that just points out that DC got eye poked as opposed to Stipe, and it's like, oh my God. See, again, this is my argument. This right here is why active fighters in the promotion should not be commentators, because there's a clear and obvious bias, and I'm not here for it. I'm not here for it.
Oh yeah, 100% there is.
I don't care. Like every time a strike was landed hard on Cormier, a strike was even landed remotely like clean on DC, there was massive reactions from the crowd. And to be fair, Joe Rogan admitted it, and that is completely fair. I don't care. I don't want to hear it during a broadcast. I want unbiased commentary as much as possible.
But that's the thing. Sometimes, man, I feel like if you even turn the commentary off, it's a totally different fight.
It is. Absolutely.
I was like, man, Stipe is winning this easily, right? And if you listen to the commentary, it was like they were sort of making it seem like DC was in there, but I don't think DC was really in there.
And that right there is the problem. Yeah. That right there is the problem. Is like I should never have to turn off the commentary for that much bias. Bias is inevitable. We all have our biases, but there is clear bias in their emotion when they're seeing something, and that's the job of a commentator. They feel that in the cage, right? So if it's their friend in there, they're gonna have way more bias, right? So I'm done with it. I never want to see another UFC commentator in the cage because it's just it just ruins it. It ruins the product for me even further than the UFC has managed to ruin it for me. A sport that I've been watching since I've been 12 years old. So.
I 100% agree. Okay, so let's talk about Sean O'Malley and his fight. What do you think?
So Sean O'Malley, I mean, that injury, obviously a pre-existing one with the Andre Sukmatuk fight. And it looked a lot like that Michael Chandler fight with Brent Primus in the first one where
that's exactly what came to my mind too.
Similar injury, at least. I mean, I'm not a doctor, but similar injury it looked like. But there was a camera angle. You can find that. You can go to my Twitter. I retweeted it where it's pretty clear that a Chito Vera leg kick, a calf kick more so, started that injury, right? So as soon as he kicks him in the calf, O'Malley tries to move. He starts to move a little bit more gingerly, like almost like the nerves aren't firing in the way that they should.
Exactly like what happened to Michael Chandler.
Exactly. And then he starts to his whole leg starts to fall apart essentially, right?
Yeah.
And you know, I think I'm happy for Chito Vera finally getting, some praise because that dude has been working. That dude's had almost like the Max Holloway trajectory where he was coming in getting beaten up by everybody, right? Wasn't exactly like put up there as like a great prospect per se, like the other guys, like, like Conor McGregor at the time, or in this case, Sean O'Malley. And now he finally gets a shot. He beats up Sean O'Malley. And then even then, again, with the commentary of the biased nature, I can't I mean, Cruz corrected himself, but it been the most like, oh, that was a weird stoppage. It's almost like he did it because of his leg. It's like, well, yeah, like if someone's injured and they can't defend themselves, that's part of intelligent defense. Therefore, you must stop the fight. Also, he was landing clean,
honestly,
unfeathered shots.
I'm not gonna lie. Even me, when I first saw that, I was a bit confused of the stoppage, right? But when you think about it, I 100% agree with it. You know,
He was landing like hard elbows to the head.
yeah,
Like there was,
yeah,
and there
hard
was
elbows. And what was Sean O'Malley gonna do? You know,
nothing. He wasn't doing anything though. He wasn't doing
Exactly.
anything.
I know. And when you take in the fact that his foot's messed up, but at the same time, when you think about the other fight that he had with his foot was messed up on one leg, you know, the other guy started wrestling him and he still won. You know?
You could argue that he was taking more damage overall, but I
Oh,
do think
no,
at least
100%. Because I forget his name. Sukentov?
Sukmatov,
Yeah. He was not even, he was just laying on him, you know? But at least Chito Vera was landing heavy, heavy elbows.
he was in a more advantageous position to hurt Sean O'Malley. O'Malley was really not in any position to move or anything like
Hmm.
that. If you really look at the positioning, O'Malley had nothing for it, nothing at all. And I personally think, I don't know what you think about this, but
Hmm.
I think this is going to be a continuing thing. If you can't take a single calf kick or if you stumble the wrong way in a fight, because if it's a nerve thing, it's very unlikely he's going to be able to fix that. And
Yeah,
personally, I don't
dude.
think he's going to get that far.
Yeah, and think about it, man. He was out for so long already because he had like injuries and other stuff going on, man. Like being a fighter is hard because especially, dude, you're going in there and you're getting messed up on your injuries. And if people know your injuries, right, they're gonna just go for that. Like
Exactly.
everybody knows his foot is messed up now, you know? It's happened twice. So why wouldn't someone go there? Especially because his fighting style is him going in and out and he's like light on his feet and everything. Like people are gonna mess up his whole movement because he's all
He
about that movement, you know?
he couldn't even. I don't know if you saw. It was towards the end of the fight, but he tried to throw a right hand to Vera. That he couldn't even plan on his back foot, which is like the main thing you need to do when you're throwing a
Exactly.
right cross or a left cross, either way.
Yeah.
But yeah, he couldn't even post on it. He couldn't even twist on his foot.
Yeah.
Like
And
he
like this isn't Karate Kid, bro. Like he's not gonna go on one leg and beat someone up.
no,
You know?
you need both feet. And honestly, um, to be honest with you, I don't see his career progressing that much farther if it's not taken care of, which I don't necessarily have much confidence that it can be.
I feel like he's gonna need a lot of time off, and I also think that with the right types of surgeries and everything, like you know, with the stem cells and all of that, I feel like he could definitely recuperate because we've seen it earlier, like with Dominic Cruz and those type of guys, right? But this is like a different injury. I feel like Dana White does have his back because I think that they do think he's like a future star. So I feel like they'd be more willing to help him.
I mean, we'll see. We'll see. They have done that in the past, which
Yeah,
they should probably just be doing for every fighter because now they don't
I
have the
know.
resources. When you're paying
Exactly.
fighters like what is it, like 25, maybe even less than 20%. Whatever. That's a story for another day, Coop. But
Hmm.
yeah, no, I personally think this is going to be worse than Anthony Pettis because at least Anthony Pettis, in terms of like he was durable in other places. I'm not even sure O'Malley has like the greatest chin in the world. I think even in the Island fight, he got cracked once. Like at least Pettis had that sort of thing. But like, I think O'Malley's going to be in a much worse spot. Even Cruz,
Mm.
as he came back, I think even around because it was really the TJ fight where he came back and he was looking good. But like, man, he was physically just deteriorating. He was just falling apart at the seams. I think
Oh yeah,
O'Malley's going to be even worse, to be completely honest with you. We've already seen it
yeah,
twice now. And bantamweight, everybody's good. He's going to get torn apart. That's my opinion. I don't think we're going to see much
yeah.
more.
There's so much better. I feel like there's so much better competition with him, and right now he's faced like he hasn't really faced even like ranked opponents, you know. So
No.
to look good in those fights, it's like yeah, it's okay. But then you have Aljamain Sterling, you have
What's going to happen when he fights a guy
Aldo, you
like
know
Marlon Moraes, who nearly
exactly.
destroyed Henry Cejudo's leg? And like, like seriously, what is he going to do to him? There's just think about it. Think of all the matchups you could think of, right? You got Cejudo, even if he comes back, going to destroy him. Even Corey Sandhagen, absolutely rip him to pieces. Aljamain Sterling, done. Peter Yan, done. there's no one, if he doesn't, it's a different story. But if this injury is something that's going to stay a little bit longer than we think it might, I don't hold out much hope for Shane O'Malley. I think the Sugar Show's overdone. You can cancel, pack up the circus. Let's go. Koop, let's talk about Jairzinho Rozenstruik versus Junior Dos Santos. I thought overall a pretty good heavyweight fight, and everybody knows I'm not in for heavyweight fights very much, but this was pretty good. This was entertaining.
Definitely this was entertaining. I think both of them are pretty entertaining fighters as it is. You know, especially JDS, he's always in there to dog and like fight. The interesting thing about this fight, though, is that they were actually teammates, you know? So seeing two teammates fight, and especially like, I don't know, have you ever had to fight with a teammate?
I mean, in a smoker, I've had a fight with a teammate, but I wasn't that close with him per se. Yeah. So, you know, it wasn't like we weren't close at the time. We were close afterwards, but we didn't know each other that well. But yeah, so I mean, but it's different though. They're probably sparring a lot more often, and also there's more tape on each other than in that situation, and there's also a lot more experience to go with it as well. And yeah, I think you kind of saw that too, where like, you know, it actually made for a really interesting fight where for once two heavyweights weren't throwing absolutely everything into every single strike, which is just completely inefficient. And I thought it was really good. I actually thought it was one of the better performances I've seen. I think the only thing I would say is that Rozenstruik was pretty, you know, he wasn't really ready to pull the trigger. And I think he got hit with more than he probably should have, to be honest with you.
But he has a pretty good chin, despite the fact of Francis Ngannou, you know, because that guy just everyone.
I mean, he's had a good chin before and after, I think, right?
Yeah. The thing is, man, I was really surprised that Rozenstruik won that. I thought like JDS would be a shoo-in for this one.
Really?
Because, like, especially looking back at his previous fights and everything, you see the Alistair Overeem fight, and Rozenstruik was losing every single minute of that fight, you know, until the last second where he clipped him, you know, and he busted his lip up.
There is something to be said.
Then the Ngannou one, right, where he got obliterated, like he got knocked out bad, and usually you know how it is, like, man, coming back from like a knockout loss that's that bad. That's why I was like, I thought that JDS had this, you know.
I didn't really think that. I honestly picked Rozenstruik easily for this one. For me, just because I think he's a more experienced striker. But there is something to what you're saying though about like him not wanting to pull the trigger that much. Like he's pretty good defensively for a heavyweight. For a heavyweight, he's okay, which means he's trash in general. But he's at least experienced. I think you can see that. Like he's not like afraid to get punched. He can take a punch pretty well. His timing's solid. And you saw that at the end, obviously, where he only needed one decent strike. But, I mean, man, there's something to be said, though, that, like, it's clear that if he's in a very long fight and he can't crack a guy that's been pretty broken, like Junior Dos Santos, he's going to probably get beat by a lot of decisions in the future. So I'm not as high as him, definitely, as I was before that, after you said that, Koop. I think that's it's a really good point.
Yeah, and what was I going to say? I think that, you know, what do you think about his future, though?
Rozenstruik?
Yeah. Do you think that he has a future, or do you think that he's even going to make it to the top 2, 3? Because I don't think so. I feel like Ngannou has the number on him, you know, and I feel like even if he fought like Derek Lewis, I feel like Derek Lewis will give him a lot of trouble.
I think Derek Lewis is probably one of the more dangerous ones for him, actually, just because, like we were kind of saying, like Lewis is a counterpuncher as well. You know, he's going to wait. He's, I guess if you can call him a counterpuncher, he just pretty much waits till he's got the perfect shot to land on you, and then rests for the next 20 minutes of a fight. I mean, that's one of those fights that goes either way. But I think for the most part, all the top heavyweights, even if he gets another second fight with Overeem might just beat him up. To be honest with you, I think Curtis Blades will mess him up. I think Walt Harris could get him as well. I think there's pretty much almost no heavyweight where I see him having that good of success. I mean, Alexei Oleinik, who fought last week too, I could see him giving him a run for his money. Yeah, I see him more of a gatekeeper. He's a gatekeeper. Yeah, he's really just like the guy you want to test a young prospect with. Heavyweights can last pretty long. Yeah. That's the one good thing that you got going for you if you're a heavyweight. You have a long career for the most part, but you and no one's that good, so you're never going to get eaten too badly by everybody else. But yeah, almost everybody's ancient in the division, and there's almost no turnover either. Speaking of some turnover, I guess, look, Koop, I'm just going to say this right off the top. Jon Jones making comments about the UFC every single heavyweight fight. Jon, please, for the love of God, make a goddamn decision. Stop. I mean, here's the reality. Here's what I think is going on. He's trolling you people.
Oh, 100%. I think he's just trying to get attention because right now no one's giving him any attention because he has no contract signed or nothing. And everybody's sort of latching onto the fact that this guy's boring as hell now. And he's not the same star that he was before, you know? So I feel like he's just trying to make himself in everybody's ears and mouths still, you know?
I can't stand when every single social media account, just like everywhere, including MMA at this point, where it's like, guys, you know this is garbage. He is trolling you. He's trying to stay in the news. And then even, I guess I understand the commentary, you got to report on it because it's like it's there, but it's like, come on, man. Come on. I'm not here for it. I'm done with it. I don't care. Stop. Just stop. Every time he does this all the time. Has he gone up to heavyweight yet? No. Has he scheduled a heavyweight fight? No. Stop. Just stop. I'm done with it. Stop talking. I don't want to ever talk about that again until he's fought a heavyweight fight. Not when he's scheduled to fight one. I want to see him in the cage with a heavyweight. Until then, I am never talking about that again on Lingo Sports. I promise you that. That's a promise.
I 100% think that we're more likely to see him face Israel Adesanya than we are seeing him ever going to heavyweight.
The point is, let's stop talking about Jon Jones at heavyweight until he's been in the goddamn cage. I am so sick and tired of it, man. I'm so sick and tired of it. MMA and combat sports. Every time you see something like, oh, look at this freak show. It's like the same thing with Mike Tyson, Roy Jones Jr. Yeah. Please, I like good fights. I don't like seeing two old men beat the shit out of each other when they're completely past it.
I know.
Enough. I've had enough of it. I've had enough of this conversation, Koop. As enjoyable as it's been, man. We will catch you guys later on Lingo Sports. We'll have more videos, whether it be MMA, basketball, whatever the case may be. Just remember to like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Take care.